Even with the 10.02 working title mod hotfix to the Citation CJ4, I've been having a terrible time trying to get VNAV to work correctly, and it's probably something I've been doing wrong. Yesterday I had success, and so I thought I would put together this little video showing you what I did in case others are having the same issues that I have had. This is a short 63 nautical mile flight from Denver International Airport down to the Colorado Springs City Airport. If you look at the list of waypoints on the left, you'll see that the first waypoint after we leave the KDEN airport is Tuggle, T-U-G-G-L-E, and it's the one on the map that is circled in green. And our next waypoint is Muso, M-U-S-O-E, and it is also circled in green on the map you see. The other three waypoints we'll be looking at on maps are on our approach plate. They are the initial approach fix at Mogul, M-O-G-A-L, and another approach fix at Awani, A-W-O-N-E, and then our final approach fix is at Rock, R-O-C-C-K. And the green circle on the map is Mogul, M-O-G-U-L, which is our initial approach fix on our approach plate. And here on the green map, the circle is around Awani, A-W-O-N-E, which is our intermediate approach fix. And here the green circle is around Rock. This is our final approach fix. This is where it all starts to happen. And it's where we want to get out of the nav mode and into the approach mode, and we want to capture our glide slope. One thing I want you to notice on the approach plate is if you look over to the left-hand side of the graph, you'll see that our touchdown zone elevation is 6,187 feet. Keep that in mind because that's where I almost made a bad error. The first thing I do is to turn on the pitot heat, otherwise it'll fuss at you and give you a warning. And then I change my MFD to show me the flight plan mode here and terrain. And then I go up and I put the bearing pointer over on the PFD to show me VOR1, which is going to be my ILS frequency. Next, we're going to go down to the FMS and initialize our position. We'll copy that top set of coordinates and paste it into the bottom one. And now we're ready to start our flight plan. We're going to be going from KDEN, which we'll put as our origin point, to KCOS, which will be our destination. If you recall, our first waypoint after leaving Denver was Tuggle, T-U-G-G-L, and so we're going to enter that. If we can just find the keys here, T-U-G-G-L, and we're going to put that in the 2 button there, and that's going to be our first waypoint. So we're going to go direct to Tuggle and execute that, and then we're going to go to the next page to put in more waypoints. And if you recall, our next waypoint is Muso, M-U-S-O-E. So we'll type that into the scratch pad and enter that as a 2, and so we'll be going direct to Muso. And we'll execute that as well. Next, we'll enter our departure, and we'll be leaving on runway 16 right. So we'll click 16 right, go on, click it, there we go. And we're going to execute that. There's no SID we're going to be using. And then we're going to go to arrivals, and we'll be arriving on 17 left, and we are not going to use that transition point. So now let's look at the legs. So we have that discontinuity between Muso and Awani, and that's where Mogul wants to go. So we're going to type in on the scratch pad Mogul, M-O-G-A-L, and we're going to put that where the discontinuity is, Boom. So now we have Muso, Mogul, Awoni, and that's on page 1, and we're going to execute this thing, by the way. And then we're going to take a look at page 2, and then we have Rock, which is our final approach fix. Then we have the runway, and you notice we have some altitudes in there. Those are altitude restrictions. On the approach plate, it shows that Mogul should be at 10,000 feet or above, so I'm going to set that for 10,000 feet. First, we're going to set our cruise altitude, and we'll do that under performance initialization, and we're going to set it for 10,000 feet. There we go, we're done with that part. Now we'll go to the takeoff. And here we need to set our temperature, and it is 8 degrees Celsius according to the PFD. And the wind is at 185 at 5 knots. And now we have our V-rotate, all of our V speeds, and we're going to send those over so they'll show up on the speed tape. Now we'll go back to performance again, and we'll do the approach performance. And once again, we're going to set our Celsius temperature, which is going to be 8 degrees C. And we're going to have wind 177 degrees at 4 knots. And we're going to go next, and we got these weird numbers for approach speeds. You just use them. I don't know why. Sometimes they come up and they make sense, and this time they didn't. I think it's got to be a bug in the mod. Now we'll come up to the control panel. And one of the first things we're going to do is to set our cruise altitude up to 10,000 feet. And we'll use flight level change to do that. So if you'll notice over on the PFD, the speed is going up as I change the speed for the flight level change, which will hold it at, or well, actually it'll hold it right at a certain speed. Even though there's no auto throttle, it'll do it by changing the pitch of the aircraft. And we're going to turn on the nav. So now it's saying LNAV. And so we have our cruise altitude, we have how we're going to get there, which is flight level change, and we're going to have navigation via GPS. Let's get out on the runway and get out of here. Okay, notice our speed is 215 knots right now, and we are currently at 8,700 feet climbing toward 10,000, which is our desired altitude. And if you look at the tape across the top, it says Alt S captured. And so we've just captured the 10,000. It's blinking up there, and we are now at 9,400, and it will start slowing down, and it will eventually just level us off at 10,000 feet and give us an ALT as our information across the top. Notice on the MFD that we have just under 4 nautical miles before we reached our first waypoint of Tuggle, and by that time we'll probably be cruising. When the Alt-S cap at the top of the PFD changes to Alt-S, it means I have not only captured, but I am locked onto that 10,000 feet. But from now until I reach my final approach fix, I want to be in VNAV mode, so I'm going to go click on VNAV. Come on, click on it, go ahead. And you'll see at the top of the PFD that that's going to change, and it's going to say V Alt S, which means I'm gonna do VNV, but I'm gonna be using what's at the top of the strip. So now it says V Alt V, and this is where my landing zone elevation error comes in. I set this down to 6,100 feet. My landing zone elevation is actually 6,187. So I should have set it up at 6,200 feet. And as you'll see when I land, I pretty near landed underground. So from this point, the airplane is going to follow the restriction altitudes all the way down until it gets as low as 6,100 feet. And then it's going to stop. But you know what'll happen before we get to 6,100 feet? We're going to be on the glide slope. So if you look on the FMS, we're traveling from Tuggle to Muso. And when we get to Muso, we'll be going to Mogul. And we're doing all of this at 10,000 feet. When we get to Mogul, with a restriction of 10,000 feet, we'll start descending toward 9,000 feet or above at Awani, as that's the next restriction. VNAV does all this for you. So if you look on the PFD at the altitude tape over toward the right, you'll see a blue number at the top says 6,100. That's our final altitude. Should be 6,200. But if you look next to it, you'll see an altitude of 10,000. That's the altitude we're using with VNAV. We're now about 18.5 miles out of Mogul, and we will be at 10,000 feet until we reach Mogul. Shortly after we reach Mogul, that 10,000 feet you see over there on the speed tape is going to change to 9,000 feet as we get toward Awani, and there will be a top of descent marker. Well, I forgot to check and enter my localizer frequency for Colorado Springs, so I'm over here now. It says 109.10, and guess what? I'm right on it. That's a good thing. And it says Localizer will be automatically tuned, and you'll see what they mean. Okay, we're just 6.2 miles out of Mogul. And since there is no descent into Mogul from our cruise altitude, since they're the same, you can't hardly see the top of descent marker behind the name Mogul. And we have picked up the localizer on nav 1. And that lovely green diamond at the bottom of the flight director window says we are pretty much right on course. And we now have a change coming very soon, 1.5 miles. And we'll be changing and preparing to dive down to 9,000 feet from 10,000 feet. Notice we have a top of descent display flashing. That means it's going to happen within 5 seconds. And now things are happening at the top of the PFD. We have a V path, and if you'll notice, we are now descending, and the new target up here on the speed tape is 9,000 feet. Yay, it's working. And once we reach Amon in just 4.3 nautical miles, we'll be going down to 8,700 feet at Rock. And when we get to Rock, we'll be turning on the approach and getting off of the nav. So if you look at the top of the PFD, it's captured the nav, VNAV that is. And now we'll be going to 8,700 feet, which we need to hit by the time we get to Rock. It's working. So very soon I'll be turning off nav and turning on approach. And if you'll notice, the glide slope diamond is getting pretty centered over there on the right side of the PFD. Well, that happened in a hurry. If you look at the top of the PFD, you'll see that we are now in approach mode. We have the localizer, we're centered on that if you look at the bottom of the PFD, and we are on the glide slope. It has us captured. Now it's going to take me down 87 feet below the surface because I have it set to go to 6,100 instead of 6,200, but I'll fly my way out of that.
Altitude.
At this moment in time, the PAPI lights look pretty good. And I'm convinced these 4 PAPI lights being red was caused by me setting the altitude at 6,100 instead of 6,200 feet. But we shall overcome.
Autopilot.
Well, I just turned off the autopilot to hand fly this thing in. What I'm going to tell you is that was a hot landing. I was doing about 140 knots when I should have been doing 106. But it has really nice speed brakes on it. So to sum it up, I'm much more comfortable than I was the many times I tried this before and had no success. Next time I'll set my landing level a little bit higher. And that should take care of that. I hope this helps somebody out there. And I really wanted to be able to fly this. I don't like flying the great big commercial jets, but I do enjoy flying the business jets from time to time. My favorite aircraft is still the Mooney. So if you enjoyed it, great. Maybe subscribe, maybe give me a thumbs up. Just go fly and have fun. That's what's important.